He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my God, my refuge, my fortress, and in Him I will trust. For He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the pernicious plague. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will trust. His truth will be your shield and buckler. You will not be afraid of the terror by night or the arrow that flies by day, nor the plague that walks in darkness, nor the plague that ravages at midday. 1,000 will fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. For you, O Lord, are my refuge. In the Most High you made your dwelling. No harm will befall you, nor will any plague come near your tent. For He will give His angels charge over you to guard you in all your ways. They will support you in their hands, so that you do not stumble with your foot on stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the snake. Thou shalt trample the young lion and the serpent at his feet. Because He loved me so dearly, I also will deliver him. I will set him on high because he knew my name. He will call on me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will take him out of her and I will glorify him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Amen.
What up, brother? How you doing?
What's up?
Ready to hear some dang stories?
Uh,
Hear some dang
none
stories?
that I can actually. No, I think it's your turn. It's your turn this time.
I was saying, you ready to hear some stories? Like I said, heads up, whenever you're, like I said, looking, you can always, if you can't think of any stories, you can look up stories online or something like that to tell at the next episode. Just heads up for next episode, just letting you know. I need, there was a search, I think it might be a screenshot. Gallery, screenshot. Alright, gotta zoom in on this shit. Okay, so this story is about a guy living in an apartment and all that. But it's a good story I got off Reddit. But anyways, so I had lived in this apartment for a total of 3 years. For the first year and a half, I had lived there with my ex-husband. Oh, it's a girl. My best friend found the apartment and was looking for someone to take it over. I was desperate to move out of my husband's mom's house and for us to finally have our own place. And so we decided to take the lease. We divorced about 1.5 years later after having moved. While my ex lived there, nothing much happened except the one thing neither of us could explain. For context, the layout of the apartment was as follows. It was on the second floor, and as soon as you walked into the apartment, on your right was the kitchen, which was open to the living room. As you walked past the living room, you'd enter a long hallway, which was about 20 feet long. On the left wall of this hallway, were 3 doors, 2 leading to 2 bedrooms, and the last door on the left was the bathroom. At the very end of the hallway was a final door that leads into the laundry room. My ex had a gaming computer as an art studio, and I had my own little desk in there with a laptop to watch YouTube while working on projects. My ex taught me proper computer etiquette, and so I always made sure I shut my computer down and didn't just leave it on constantly. My ex had 2 cats, and anyone who's had cats knows they love to jump up onto surfaces and cause trouble. And so to avoid this, I always kept my studio door closed when I wasn't in there. One night, I remember walking to what sounded like my ex's gaming computer playing some sort of video. I assumed maybe one of the cats had jumped onto the modem and accidentally turned it on. In and out of grogginess, I brushed off and just drifted back to sleep. However, upon my ex having woken up for work early in the morning, I realized it had been my laptop that had been turned on, because I realized he was going into my studio to turn it off. I immediately felt a ping of anxiety go through my chest because I had no idea how that computer could possibly be on, and on top of that, playing a YouTube video. First of all, you needed to enter a passcode for the computer. Suddenly, I know for a fact I had turned off my computer off, as I always remembered to. And finally, my studio door had been closed for hours before we had headed off to bed. If I had by chance left my laptop on loudly playing YouTube videos, we would have heard it before drifting off to sleep, and we would have turned it off then. So neither of us could really explain that, and it was pretty strange. But nothing really happened after that, and so we just kind of forgot about it and thought maybe my computer was somehow acting up. However, once we divorced and my ex moved out, this was when things started get crazy. My ex took his cats with him, and so it was just me and my dog in the apartment. Just for future context, my dog always slept in the bedroom with me. She never slept out in the living room through the night. I always got the creepy feeling that I was being watched. I never felt 100% at ease while living there alone. I never ever smoked cigarettes, and my friend's sister hadn't ever smoked cigarettes there, and the smell of stale old cigarettes would always come and go randomly. Normally, I would smell it in the laundry room, but sometimes I'd smell it as soon as I'd walk in the door or in the hallway. I could never explain where the smell was coming from. The hallway in the apartment always felt incredibly creepy. My friend told me that every time she came over there while her sister had lived there, the hallway always gave her the creeps too. But her sister had lived there for 10 years and swears she had never experienced anything there. About 6 months after divorce, I started dating my current boyfriend. Sometimes he would spend a couple nights over at the apartment with me, because quite frankly, I really don't like being there alone. And he didn't like the idea of me being there alone. Things had been happening that honestly had me wondering if someone was secretly living in my apartment. I lived in a really bad area, and there were a lot of homeless people around, so maybe one had snuck in. I didn't really have any other explanation. I'd hear things rattling around in the kitchen at night while lying in bed. The most terrifying thing while I was in bed alone, I have a Great Dane, and she sleeps on her own futon bed, which sat at the foot of my bed. She is super laid back, and when she's asleep, she's out. Nothing's waking her up, especially in the middle of the night while we're both asleep. Well, on this specific night, I woke up to her growling at something. She never does this just randomly and look randomly. In the middle of the night, it was about 2 a.m. She was looking directly into the hallway, and she was super alert, sitting up and baring her teeth. I've literally never seen her do that before. That alone scared me. So I shushed her so I could try to listen, and when she was quiet, I heard the creaking and shuffling of footsteps coming down the hallway from the living room towards my door. I was absolutely shaken with fear. I was fully believing that someone was in my apartment. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I was terrified. I slowly climbed out of bed and grabbed my pistol, which was under my bed. I listened a little more and heard the footsteps proceeding closer, and my dog continued growling. I walked towards my door. The door was open, and I hate to say that I fully expected to see someone in my hallway. The person who I suspected had been living in my apartment secretly for months. But I turned the doorway. There was absolutely nothing. I was relieved for a minute, but then it hit me to check the rest of my apartment. After finding nothing, I made sure all my windows and front door was locked. They all already were. I think it goes without saying I had quite a lot of trouble sleeping the rest of the night. My boyfriend didn't experience near as much as I did, but he believes me and has had some experiences of his own. Randomly waking up in an absolute panic in the middle of the night, I heard what sounded like the silverware drawer opening suddenly and then slamming shut on the bed with my boyfriend. I didn't even get up to check and see what it was at this point. We were really just trying to ignore everything. However, that morning I was going down to the first floor to get my mail. I lived above a restaurant, and I was friendly with the owner, but we never really spoke much. I happened to run into him, and we started small talk. And I told him I was moving. He said, "Wow, really?" And then he asked if I'd ever experienced anything while living there. At first, I thought he meant just people in the alley harassing me. And I said, "Well, sure, but people go through my trash sometimes." And he stopped me and said, "No, I mean things you can't explain happening in the apartment." And my face went white. I told him, as a matter of fact, yes, and I asked why he was wondering. He told me that he had customers and employees who had experienced things and that they had seen apparitions in the restaurant. He said he had experienced things like cans of food flying off the shelves and just the really heavy, eerie feeling of being watched. He told me that apparently the tenant who had previously lived in the apartment, which was in the same building as mine in the front, had mentioned to him that he used a Ouija board in his apartment once. The owner of the restaurant had self-proclaimed medium come to get a reading on the building. She said she felt energy vortexes in its basement. I don't know what that means, but to be honest, hearing all of that was a lot because I had spent so long just trying to shrug off everything that had been happening and just ignore it all. But hearing this made me realize maybe it wasn't all just in my head. The last thing I remember experiencing was one night when my boyfriend and I were getting ready for bed. I was already in bed, and he was brushing his teeth in the bathroom down the hall. My dog was coming into the bedroom to get onto her bed, and I said goodnight to her. My boyfriend came in the bedroom and asked, "Who were you talking to?" I told him I just said goodnight to the dog. He said he was asking because he thought I was on the phone because he heard goodnight and goodnight said out loud twice. I told him I only said it once.
Damn. I got goosies.
Like, that is straight up freaky as hell. And it's,
Especially the fact that she started off saying it was her husband, and then later on in the end, it was her boyfriend.
yeah,
That's freaky stuff right there.
yeah, definitely. Well, hey, so you also heard the story, so you know what it really was. Okay, this is the last story I'm going to tell because last one was a long story, but this is a short story. So, when I was struggling with heroin addiction, my mom, who is fairly religious, suggested I go to church and maybe talk to someone there about what was going on. I was pretty close to rock bottom at the time, so I thought, "What the hell? I'll go talk to someone." Walked to the Catholic church down the street. I'm not Catholic, but it was the closest church, and walked in. The young preacher, he was wearing all black with the collar, looked about late 20s, early 30s, with brown hair and brown eyes, green eyes. Walked out into the hall at the same time I walked in and introduced himself as Father Mike. He looked at me and said, "You look like something is pulling you down. Do you need to talk?" I said, "Yeah," and we sat in the entry hall and talked. We talked for about 2 hours. Eventually, everything just poured out of me. I felt so comfortable with him and at peace. Talked about the addiction issues and how my life was so messed up. At that point that I was thinking about killing myself to stop the cycle. He looked me in the eye with these crazy green eyes. I've never seen anybody with that shade of green before. And told me, "You don't have much time left. You keep using and you're you're on borrowed time. And there's not much of that left. Get yourself into detox and get your shit together. Otherwise, you won't have to worry about taking your life." I said, "Yeah, I know. I've done a bunch of times." He cut me off and said, "I know. I'm being serious and I can't. If you don't get sober this time, you won't get another chance." When he said that, I got chills, so I thanked him for his time and called my mom, and she drove me to detox. On the way to the hospital, I told my mom about Father Mike, and she said she was going to thank him for talking with me. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and my mom calls me and treats me. She says, and she went to the church and asked for Father Mike. The staff said that there wasn't anyone named Mike who worked there, and there wasn't any young man with brown hair and green eyes. She asked if I was sure about Father Mike. I said I was 100%. I still remember how green his eyes were. She checked at various other churches in the area, thinking I was high, and wandered farther from the place I was staying. No one had a Father Mike or anyone who fits his description. Mom was completely convinced that I had a run-in with my guardian angel. I wasn't so sure, but his eyes and the way he said, "You won't get another chance," instead of "You might not get another chance," still gives me chills. I did go on to get sober and to get my life together.
Dang it. See, that hits really, really to home because
Yeah.
my dad with stage 4 liver failure, my brother, he's gone off the wagon again. That's scary stuff there.
This crazy thing about how the guardian angel showed up, and I was reading some of the comments to the Reddit post, and a lot of people are thinking it could have been Archangel or something like that, thinking it could have been an Archangel or something that visited him. But it's just crazy to read that thing story.
Very, very true.
I like how he said he's not Catholic, but he still went to a Catholic church just because it's the closest church. And something else I believe in, even with the church streams I preach, is it doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what. That's why I'm non-denominational, because I feel like people make too much of a big deal out of Catholicism, baptism, Baptist, whatever. Make too much of a big deal out of all that when it, in my opinion, doesn't really matter. It's just you believe in God, and that you don't need a church to. You go to whatever church you want and still hear the word. Obviously, though, but some churches I probably wouldn't recommend going to, but like I said, you go to any church and still hear the word of God, still talk to God. It doesn't matter where you are. You can stay at home and still talk to God.
Oh, you could be anywhere.
God doesn't care if you're a Baptist, God doesn't care if you're Baptist, if you're Catholic, if you're Jehovah's Witness, whatever. He just cares about you.
That's very true. Very true. Matter of fact, I think on that note, we should
even like the Satanist. I mean, he doesn't like that, but it breaks his heart to see that that's what you choose. You choose that over him.
Very true.
Because he still loves you, loves you even if you chose someone else over him. But anyways, like I said, that video was good. Stories were good. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The stream we just did was good. I'll upload that video and I'll send you the link. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna go ahead and start recording.